Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast. This podcast is for and about first-time pilgrims walking the pilgrimage routes in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. One of the things I love the most about the Camino is how incredibly moving and inspiring the stories of other pilgrims are. I hope you are ready for all of those incredible feelings, because today I have the compelling After the Camino story of US veteran Paul, who walked the Camino last October with the life-changing program offered by Warriors on the Way. Hi, this is Nancy, and I'd like to start by telling you a bit about this program. This is, by the way, right from their website, warriorsontheway.org. Warriors on the Way is a pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago that is designed to facilitate a combat veteran's healing from PTSD and moral injury. PTSD and moral injury are both directly linked to an overall reduction in quality of life and increased veteran suicides. This program works to reduce PTSD and moral injury symptoms, which in turn improves quality of life and helps in the effort to reduce the veteran suicide rate. The pilgrimage is led by Fr Steven Rindahl, who is US Army retired and an experienced pilgrim on the Camino. Father Steve has designed this pilgrimage based on his own pilgrimage experiences and supported by his doctorate in responding to combat trauma, and also through the US Army Chaplaincy course he developed and taught on how to provide a ministerial response to moral injury. In other words, Paul and his pilgrim comrades were in very good hands. I have the Warriors on the Way website in the show notes in case you missed it. You met Paul, by the way, in Season 4, Episode 10, when he shared about his military service in Iraq and how he has struggled since. What a delight it is to hang out with him after his Camino, after this healing journey that was so filled with love and connection. Paul's story reminds me that we all have a story, and the thing with stories is that they are meant to be told. They are meant to be shared. How do you tell your Camino story? To whom do you tell it? I'm exploring these questions and using this podcast to help pilgrims tell their stories. When I get back from the Camino at the end of May, I will be looking for more people to have as guests on this podcast. I want to hear your stories, what you did, why you did it, what it ended up meaning, and what you are doing now that your walk on the Camino de Santiago is done. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast, please let me know by either following the link in the show notes or by sending me an email to nancy@thecaminoexperience.com. I can share only so many pilgrim stories here, only 50 or so a year, but there are so many more pilgrims with stories to share. So I'm working on a way to increase that. Do you remember the project I mentioned a couple episodes back when you met Claire and Richard? This is part of that project. More details will be coming in June, but for now, I want to invite you to start to think about what story you want to tell about your pilgrimage on the Camino. Maybe you've already been telling your story, or maybe you are still trying to figure out what your pilgrimage was really all about. Don't worry, we will get to the heart of your story. If you are new to this podcast, and if you haven't yet walked the Camino, don't worry, your story is already unfolding too. If you are just getting started on the planning path, you may want to jump back to the start of this podcast, back to Season 1, Episode 1, and work your way through those first episodes that show you how to answer the big, important questions you need to answer so that you can get your Camino on the calendar. Okay, how about we hear the story from our warrior on the way. Let's go ahead and hear from Paul. Paul, hi. Welcome back to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Hi, Nancy. Thanks for having me. It's my pleasure.
Ah, great. Well, I've been so eager to hear how your Camino went, and I hope people have listened to the first conversation that we had. That was so incredibly moving. I got a lot of feedback on that episode, how touched people were and how they were rooting for you on the trail. So I think they'll be eager to hear how it went.
Yeah, well, obviously I made it because I'm here talking to you. So
Phew.
there was a few challenges, and there were some days where like, well, I don't know exactly why we're here, but everything happens for a reason, and I'm glad to have done the Camino. I'm glad to be a part of the Warriors on the Way, and very grateful the opportunity that Father Steve Rindahl and his team gave me and the other 5 veterans that were on the trip with me. So it was an experience of a lifetime, but I am definitely want to go back to the Camino. And I kind of, we had that conversation before in my earlier interview that I hadn't even been there yet, and I knew I wanted to return. So
A lot of people feel that way. I love that. I love that. Excellent. Well, we're going to get the whole story today. So, how about we start where I always start and put the pin in the map? Would you share with us what your Camino experience was in terms of when you started, how far you went, and how long it took you?
okay, sounds great. So I left my house in upstate New York on the 26th of September, and I flew down to San Antonio, Texas, because that's where the Warriors on the Way is based out of. Father Steve Rindahl, that runs the nonprofit, takes a group of disabled veterans with fighting with PTSD and moral injury on a Camino every year. And so we were supposed to be there on the 27th, but I was kind of a nervous person. I'm afraid to fly. I'm not afraid to fly, but there's always something that happens when you fly. So I flew a day early, so I knew that I was going to get there. So I flew on the 26th and didn't have to be there till the 27th. So what I did, so we went from there. We left San Antonio on the 28th, and we flew to Madrid. We took private transportation from Madrid to Astorga. The first place we stopped was right there at the Astorga Cathedral and the Gaudi Palace. And I paid to go into the Gaudi Palace, and that's where I got my very first stamp on the Camino, was at the Gaudi Palace. And we walked through there, and I know you know the history of the Gaudi Palace. And for everybody that doesn't know, it's a museum. And at one point in time, it was going to be the cathedral for Astorga. And then several people that came in and were like, oh, we're keep working on it, and just got to Gaudi. And Gaudi's not the in a bad way. It was the architect that designed the palace itself. And it's, since they said this is too much to have to be a cathedral, we need to build another cathedral. And they did it right across the street, which is a beautiful cathedral as well. So those were the first 2 stamps I got on the Camino. That was the first time I saw the shell on the sign in the plaza right outside the cathedral there. So that's where we kind of started.
What an amazing start. Paul, I can already tell this is going to be an emotional conversation. Just that start, and to imagine you meeting a group of veterans who are all on the precipice of this experience, knowing what it's designed for, and to just be so willing to take these steps, get yourself to Astorga and get started. And I love hearing the history. I don't think I knew that history of the Astorga Gaudi Palace, which is,
Yeah,
by the way, my favorite building on the Camino. So I love that you got to start there.
it's amazing. I took so many pictures inside there. It just about wore out my phone. So I can back up a little bit and kind of tell you what we did prior to getting to Spain, if I could.
Let's do this. Let's get the rest of the pin in the map.
Perfect.
Okay, so you got to Astorga, and then what did you do? What was your walk?
So once we got to Astorga, we got to the albergue. We stayed out. We got up nice and early the next morning, and we had mass, and we started walking. We walked for 10 days.
Okay.
So we started walking on the 30th of September, and we walked and we finished on the 9th of October. So 10
Okay.
days of walking.
10 days of walking. And you finished where?
We finished in Santiago, at the cathedral, and we walked through the remnants of Hurricane Kirk on that day. So there was thunderstorms and lightning and rain and trees down and power out. Just that last day there was warnings: don't walk, don't hike. But we have a deadline. We have a time. We have to be there. The next day we went to mass in the cathedral, and they swung the bufalera for us. Father Steve's brother sponsors that for us, so we can see that. So we had to be at mass at a certain time on that date. So we had no choice to walk that last leg from. I have it in my notes where we're at on that hurricane day. So that was an adventure in and of itself.
It sounds like it. Oh my gosh. You want to go ahead and share what that whole experience was like, that coming into Santiago and the weather and the excitement?
It was great. So the night before, the albergue we stayed at was in Opino.
Okay.
So I don't know how far that is, maybe 23, 25 kilometers, something like that or so into the finish. It's not a long ways. It was very, very doable at that point in time. But the night before, we kept getting all these severe weather warnings on our phones, and people are looking up on Facebook, hey, it says don't walk, don't do this. And we're all like, and it's just raining cats and dogs all night, all morning. Our clothes are still, we did laundry every night, but our shoes are still wet at this point in time. And we're all like sitting in the lobby in the kitchen living room area of the albergue we were at, thinking like, we're not really going to walk in this. We're going to wait till this breaks, right? Nope, out we go. And we got a mission. So we're not more than 1,000 meters from the albergue, and we left every morning when it was still dark. We had headlamps on, and some of us used them, some of us didn't. And we get 1,000 meters up the road or so, we made a wrong turn, and we realized we had to come back. And then we came back, and then we went along. After we get on this dark stretch, the first thing we come across is a tree all the way across the road.
Oh no.
So me and one of the other pilgrims that was on our adventure, she lays down underneath the tree, and I take her a picture. It's like the tree fell on her, so and we're just laughing. And I mean, there's nothing you could do but laugh at that point in time. And
You can't miss a photo op.
it was crazy. I mean, the radar showed reds and oranges and yellows and all the stuff that you shouldn't be really hiking in.
Mm-hmm.
We saw down trees. There was power went out when we stopped in a little some Pada de Villa. We stopped and had a cafe con leche, and me and Rebecca, we got our drinks and we sat down. And as soon as we started drinking, the power went out, and all the other people are waiting to get their drinks.
Oh, good timing.
Now they can't make anything, and we're like, well, glad we got ours when we did, and we're not sharing. So, and then we got about 10 kilometers out. One of the pilgrims, as veterans will do, stopped, and there was like, I don't know, we didn't always walk together as a group. We were, individuals or twos or threes, but we kind of congregated. And I think all 6 of maybe 5 of our veterans in our group were there. Somebody had the foresight to have some lukewarm or cold beers, however you want to call it, at the 10-kilometer mark. And they pulled those out of our packs, and we're sitting there in the rain at the 10-kilometer mark, having a beer, celebrating that we only have 10 more kilometers to go. And at that point in time, the trail is totally underwater. We can't take the trail. We had to hop on a highway and walk, and it was all uphill. I don't even know where it was at, but we kept going and going. And then when we got up to the overlooks Santiago, the pilgrim monument to the pilgrims, where I'm sure you've been there.
Monte de Gozo.
It had stopped raining by the time we got there. We're like, oh, this is a sign. And it was cleared up by the time we got into the cathedral in Santiago. And it was amazing. I mean, we're still all soaking wet from walking all morning, but we made it. We knew at that point in time, we're going to make it. And there were some times previously days that even myself, I didn't know I was going to make it. I had 2 injuries when I was walking that almost took me out. And it was just, it can happen to anybody. It's crazy.
Yeah, it sure can. It sure can. What a moment. So the statues that you described were Monte de Gozo.
And I stood like this with them, you know.
You have to pose with the statues to get the proper
Yeah.
picture because you have to be in that position of elation and excitement. And oh my goodness, I can see the spires
And
of the cathedral.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was very cool. And
Mm,
we were kind of disgruntled then because we were like, we're walking off the trail to go over there because it's not actually on the trail. It's
yeah.
a couple kilometers away, you know, and you have to kind of go down through the trees and get over there. But once we got there and it stopped raining, we're like, okay, this is all right. We still hurt, we're still wet and tired and cold, and would really like, you know, lunch or breakfast, or it all kind of ran together after a while there.
But that moment of realizing you are going to reach your destination
Yeah.
is incredible.
It was just amazing. I'd like to do it on sunnier conditions.
Right.
My next Camino, there can be no rain. It has to be sunshine.
You know, there should be an app for that. Don't tell me what the forecast is. I'm going to order my weather. Thank you very
Right.
much. Oh, we got to work on that. Okay. Wow. Well, I want to hear more of the ins and outs and the daily grind and whatever else happened on the walk. Let's go back to the beginning when you met in San Antonio with the group. What was that like? What was the experience of arriving and meeting your group and getting ready from the position of San Antonio, knowing what you're heading off to?
A little bit of anticipation, some nerves. You know, none of us had met before except for me and one guy. I met when I was driving across the country last summer prior to meeting in San Antonio. So it was kind of apprehensive. You know, everybody's their own individual, and you
Yeah.
bring, you know, 6 veterans into a group like that, along with the 3 support personnel. You don't know the unknown, and you're kind of apprehensive and uneasy. But by the end of the night, they gave us all of our gear. They gave us a backpack and a rain jacket, paca or whatever, and our water bottle and all the stuff that they needed. And we'll get our hiking poles when we get to Spain. But we kind of did all that, and then we brought all of our personal gear, clothing and stuff. And then Father Steve had one of those fish scales, and he weighed our pack, and they couldn't weigh more than 18 pounds. That's a
Okay.
strict rule, you know. And I was over a little bit, I'll admit it. And he's like, I
Mm.
said, I got nothing I can downsize. He's like, all right, but you know, but they were weighing my wife was like, are they gonna actually weigh your stuff? They said they are, you know. So I wore my heaviest clothes, and then so I would try to stay under the 18 pounds. I came pretty close.
Good strategy.
Yeah, we did that. And then we went as a group to our very first pilgrim dinner. Went to one of Father Steve's favorite restaurants. And we had our first pilgrim meal together, which was first of many, which was pretty neat, you know. So to get not only our veterans from our group, Father Steve, Connie that walked with us was the psychologist that walked with us. Father Steve's wife was there, along with some of the other pilgrims from previous Warriors on the Ways expedition. They went with us. And one of the guys, and I apologize, I don't remember his name, but he made us these little coin pouches. And it's got the
Oh,
shell on there, and it's got like Texas steel seal on the back. And they're all handmade. He cuts the leather and dyes it himself. And you don't know how valuable this is because, as you know, all your euros, you get them, you say you break a paper bill, and the next thing you know, you have 5 pounds of euro change.
exactly.
And by putting it in this, you can have that in your pocket, and you need to buy a coffee or whatever, you pull out your change and you had it right there, and you don't have all this change loose running around. And that was his, you know, contribution, because he
Sweet.
had it. He found a need to make something to make our lives better, and that was just the first of many experiences on the Camino and with this group that helped me grow and be a better person by just a simple gesture like this, a coin pouch for my euros.
Such a small thing. But yeah, it's so interesting because it has such a practical application, but it also demonstrated for you the generosity of people.
Yeah,
Wow. Gorgeous.
it was pretty amazing. And I apologize, I don't remember his name, so
That's
I have
okay.
trouble with names, but
That's okay.
great guy. And then we, you know, we got done with our meal and went back, and then we got up early and got on our flights and flew the 1,000 hours it takes to get from the United States to Spain.
It's a long trip.
I don't care what anybody tells you, it's 1,000 hours. It's just, they're going to feed you like 3 times. You're not going to be able to sleep good. You're going to watch 10 movies. It just,
that is exactly my experience.
It's miserable. And for me, I'm dreading this because me and my wife are flying to Ireland and Scotland for our anniversary trip Saturday. So I know that I'm going to be on a plane for a little bit less time this time.
You're doing it again. Doing it again.
But we're heading over again.
Okay. All right. So you had some time in San Antonio, but you got in there early. Did you have any notable experiences while you were waiting to meet up with the group?
I did, and it was an incredible experience. And I have to thank Father Steve for this, because he told me about, they have El Camino San Antonio, which is a local pilgrimage in Texas. And if you can see right here on my my picture board, I have a passport for that.
Let me just say what you're looking at. So since my listeners can't see it. So so what Paul's got is he created a vision board with the memorabilia from his Camino experience. And he's got his credencial and his Compostela, looks like maybe a certificate of distance and some other things that make this very memorable. So that's a beautiful display. That's what he's pointing to. Okay, go ahead.
So on there, I have a certificate of completion for the El Camino San Antonio in Texas, and it's like 15 miles. So at this point in time in my training, I can walk, as far as I need to walk, because I've been walking, all last year to get ready for this, because that was one of the things I was worried about as a disabled veteran, making it day after day after day and walking and uphills and downhills in the weather. And so I knew walking 15 miles in the heat of Texas was going to be no problem. So there was they got a Padre McGrill, I'm probably butchering the name, Pilgrim Center. And when I got there at the airport, I went right over there before they closed, and I got a passport. And I don't think it's that passport right here on my board. Okay. And I picked up the passport, and then I got a stamp right there. And the lady says, when you get done, come back here and then we'll give you a certificate. And so they gave me this certificate right here that I have framed in the shadow box or picture box, whatever you want to call it. And then along the way, I got several different stamps, just like you do when you're on the Camino. I started it. I Ubered the next morning down to the Mission Espada. I asked for a late checkout in my hotel room, and I got that because my hotel I stayed at was like a mile from where the Pilgrim Hotel was going to be, where we were all going to meet later that day. So I Ubered down to the Mission Espada just with me and my water bottle. Didn't have any polls or nothing in my phone and my passport. And I went from the southern part there is Mission Espada. Then you go to Mission San Juan, Mission San Jose, Mission Concepcion, and you finish up in San Antonio at the San Fernando Cathedral. And you get a stamp at each of those along the way. And there's a couple other places you can get stamps. And I just, did a nice leisurely 15-mile walk, that morning, and then went on and had some tacos and beer at a place close to the Alamo there, and then Ubered back to my hotel, got my stuff, and then walked over to meet the rest of the pilgrims. So that was how I started my Camino, was walking an extra 15 miles training walk just to make sure I was still going to be good.
Oh, I love it. And what did that add to the experience? So if you look end to end at your Camino, with that being at the beginning and then arriving in Santiago, what did that add to the overall experience?
It was pretty good. And I don't think it was the beginning, because I actually started the Camino when I signed up for this,
right.
And then all the training I did up to that was just like the final, okay, I know I can make this. I know I can walk 10, 15, 20 miles every day, no problem. And I'm going to be good. And it was just like a confidence booster for me to kick this off and say, yep, I'm ready. Let's go. My boots are good and my clothes are good. And
perfect.
I'm ready to go. So it was great. And then I personally got another certificate that nobody else in my group did, because they all flew in the day while I was walking. They were all
Uh-huh.
like, still traveling or whatever. So it
Yeah.
was pretty good. It just kind of made the whole experience a little bit extra special.
Wow. Fantastic. It's so great to be able to keep an eye out for those little things that we can grab onto and add to the experience. And in hindsight, it really adds tremendously. Nice addition. Excellent. All right. So I'd love to talk a little bit about before you walked the Camino and what prompted you to join the Warriors on the Way group. Would you share a little bit of your story? I know we touched on it in the first conversation that we had, but I would love for you to just talk about why this trip was necessary for you.
Yeah. So I found out about the Warriors on the Way from a fellow soldier that I served with. He used to work for me. I deployed in Iraq in 05, 06, retired from the Army in 07. So I did a little over 21 years on active duty as an infantryman in the Army. And my deployment to Iraq was not the greatest. I've seen a lot of stuff and did a lot of stuff while I was there. And ever since then, combat changes you. Not always for the better as well. And so you see and do a lot of things over there. And I think I told you about one particular day that was really, there was a lot of days that were bad, but ever since then, it's just, life is so precious.
Mm.
I've lost a lot of family and some friends in the last couple of years that just made me going on this Camino mean it something a little bit more, because the rock I carried and left at Cruz de Ferra had my mother-in-law's name on it. My father-in-law, who I never met, my mom and dad, a friend who I lost last year, had a heart attack just unexpectedly, that was younger than me.
Oh, wow.
A cousin of mine that died of cancer at 34 last year, and then
Oh,
his son was born in December of last year as well. So I carried that along with all the memories and all the people that we lost when I was in combat, and the people that were injured, and all the burdens of the PTSD and the mortal injury that I have in me and probably will always be with me. But I was able to put some of those names on that rock and carry it with me in my training leading up to going with the Warriors on the Way, and then carrying on there. We kind of had a couple sessions where we'd talk about stuff. And when we got up to Cruz de Ferra, before we left our burdens, our stones on the pile there, we walked up, and if you've been there, we stayed. That was the first thing we did that morning. I'm trying to remember where we stayed. Las Herreras. Does that sound right?
Las Herrerías.
Yes.
So that would have been the next mountain range. I wonder
The
if you
next day,
stayed.
okay.
Yeah. Did you stay in Fontebadón or in Rabanal del Camino?
For how you said that.
Ponferrada is even after the cross. Yeah.
No, okay. So we stayed in Fonspadero.
That's it. Fontebadón. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where we stayed. So when we left out of there, it was super dark. We walked all the way. It's all uphill,
Yep.
all the way uphill to there to the Cruz de Ferra in the dark. And then every morning we'd have mass. So we actually had mass at one of the picnic tables underneath the little like overhang, and we had mass
Beautiful.
up there. And then everybody, prior to mass, we put our stones, and some of them were bigger, some of them were smaller. Mine was kind of a medium size. One guy actually had a metal plate that was like weighed like 3 pounds that he
Mm.
put up there, and he had a special meaning to him, something he had made. And you know, Father Steve, we had mass. He blessed all that, all of our rocks, and knowing that we were going to leave those at the Cruz de Ferra and leave some of our burdens and our guilt
Mm.
behind. And that was a very moving experience to do that and leave that rock there. I almost wanted to keep it with me and keep going with it, just to make the burden a little bit harder, the journey a little bit harder. But I was glad to relieve the pressure off of my shoulders just by that little bit of rock. And I recommend anybody that's doing the Camino, for whatever reason you're doing it, bring something like that. Train with it on your way over there, so it's always with you. And then
Yeah.
knowing that when you leave that there at Cruz de Ferra, especially if you've been somebody that's been walking for the last couple of weeks to get there, unlike us that it's only been 2 days, so it was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. So going into this, before you even got to the Camino, what expectation did you have of how this trip would impact you?
I was just hoping it was going to make me a better person and make me appreciate life more. And I think it did both of those. I still have troubles, just like anybody knows. You have good days and bad days, and
Yeah.
sometimes you go back and think about um, a little nugget or a little moment that you had on the Camino, and it's like, okay, yeah, things aren't that bad. It could be worse. I could be walking uphill in the rain right now and twisting my ankle and hobbling for the next 4 days.
Ugh.
So
Yeah. So let's tell that story. What happened on the trail? What kind of injuries did you sustain?
it was probably our fifth day of walking up to Osabrera. So we walked up there and we had mass at the cathedral, the little sanctuary they have up at the top there.
Mm-hmm.
So we walked up that was in Las Herreras where we stayed the night prior. So it's about 6 miles uphill, very steep
Uphill.
uphill,
Yeah.
all the way uphill from Las Herreras, if I'm saying that correct, all the way up to Osabrera. It's all uphill. Just there's nothing flat about it. It's 6 miles and it's straight uphill.
Yep.
And it was a wet and rainy morning, and I was up in the front walking with Father Steve, just talking, and I was on the left side of him, and we were talking about being in the Army and airborne stuff and just deployments and whatever. And they have these little, lack of a better term, rain gutters that come across the trail that are full of rocks, and it's just where the water's eroded. And I kind of stepped over those, and it was off camber, and I twisted my left ankle to the left, and as I get hurt a little bit, but I was fine. Well, evidently I wasn't, because by the time I
Oh,
got to the top, it was bad, and we got to the albergue later that night, and my left foot was swollen up about a third the size it was. And a couple days before that, I had got a hot spot on my right pinky toe.
mm,
Wasn't quite a blister, but it ended up losing that toenail just from, I think that was from shucking going downhill
uh-huh.
in wet boots. And
Yep.
I had great boots, great socks. Can't say enough about having the right equipment before you go on the Camino. So I had that injury, but once I injured my left ankle, I totally forgot about my right toe. It was fine.
Yes. Yes.
It was so, for the next 3 or 4 days, people are like, "Are you all right? You gonna make it?" I'm like, It hurts. You can see me limping, and my ankle's still swollen. I'd ice it at night if I could and keep it elevated, but you just got to keep going. We didn't have the luxury of like some people do on the Camino, where if you get injured, take a day or two and just hang out, get a hotel room or albergue or whatever. We had a timeline. We had 10 days to do our Camino from Astorga to Santiago, so we had to keep stepping. We had reservations every albergue we stayed at in advance, and somebody knew where we were staying every night. We didn't always know. We're like, all right, let's follow the leader, or they'd tell us in the morning, we're stopping in this town. Don't go past
Don't
this
go too
point.
far.
This is the last water point. Make sure if you get to there before anybody else, stop and wait right there, because
Yeah.
otherwise you're going to walk on. You're going to miss the town or whatever. We got disconnected one time really bad, but we never lost anybody. We came back
Phew.
with everybody on the plane,
Well,
so
that's a
that
good
was good.
thing.
Yeah,
Mission successful.
right.
Yeah. All right. So that was an injury. Were there other injuries or other physical challenges that you remember that shaped the journey?
Those were my only two injuries: my left ankle and my right toe.
Okay.
We had a couple other people had some issues. We had one guy might have got food poisoning or something, but we all ate the same food, so I would recommend traveling with some Imodium, because if you get that kind of sickness, it's not great, and you need something to stay at. But the pharmacies there are great. You can get pretty much anything you need, from bandages to Imodium or Tylenol or aspirin or whatever. So you don't have to carry a lot of extra stuff. I always see on the Facebook pages and forums that people are like worried about what you need to bring. Bring as little as possible, and then cut that back in half again because you don't need that much. And if there's something you need, the Camino will provide. You got euros, you got an ATM card, a Visa card, you can get what you need.
Yeah. So speaking of that, you said you were over the initial weight limit. What did you discover on the trail about how much you were carrying and how much you needed?
I think you only need one set of clothes to walk in, and then one set of clothes to like shorts and another t-shirt or something. I don't even think if I did it again, I would take two sets of hiking clothes like I did. I would just do laundry as needed. Every albergue we stayed at had laundry facilities, and that was one of the things we did. We had Jim, our wrangler, last of a better term. He was our medic. He was our porter because he kind of carried like the first aid kit and stuff. He was our first aid guy, and he was like the subject matter expert. We'd get ready to stop for breakfast. He'd go up ahead. He knew everybody's breakfast order. You're getting bacon, eggs, and a piece of bread and whatever coffee you wanted. He'd ordered the same thing. And if you didn't like it, it's too bad. That's what you're getting for breakfast, you know? So he got everybody's coffee order. And my coffee order started out as Americana because I drink coffee black.
Yep.
Before I left Spain, I was drinking cafe con leches because they are way better, in my personal opinion, than just an Americana.
They're an experience.
And I tried a double A, and I might have tried some Vino Tinto and a few Estrada beers, you know, stuff like that. But
Yeah.
so it was pretty good. So I forgot where I was going with this story.
That's okay. That's okay. I kind of did too. That's all good. Let me ask you another question then.
Okay.
So if you look at your reasons for going to walk the Camino and then you look at what happened, did you get what you went for?
I did. And then some.
I think my listeners would love to hear what transformation took place on the Camino for you, if you're willing to share that.
Yeah. So it just opened up to me. And I've been all around the world more than a couple times.
Yeah.
But just the amazing people that are walking the Camino. You know, you hear about people like, oh, is it safe? I was like, I never felt unsafe a day in my life, you know, walking the Camino. It was just, it was an amazing experience. And if you need something, people will help you out, you know. I met a guy from England one day, and the next day I was walking along and looked up ahead and I was like, hey, Alex. And he turned around, hey, Paul, how's it going? You know, and stuff like that, you know, you'd see. And for us, because we were such a brief timeline, there was just a small wave of people that we walked with, but we saw multiple people, multiple times that we had seen either walking on the Camino or at albergue or at a dinner or breakfast or wherever. And you'd run into the same group of people on and off.
Yeah.
We walked into a church one morning and we were getting a stamp, and I was taking some pictures in this beautiful painting on the ceiling, and all of a sudden I hear somebody playing a didgeridoo, and that makes a very, very distinctive sound. And I was like, I own a didgeridoo. I don't know how to play it. I got it at unclaimed luggage in Scottsboro, Alabama years ago, but for like $5. So I have one. My brother knows how to play it, but I don't, but distinctive sound.
Yes.
I come back out of that little alcove I'm in, and here's a guy over there in the corner playing a didgeridoo. I was like, well, that's something you don't see every day, you know?
Uh-huh.
But this guy, his name is Oliver, and he's just walking the Camino. He said he's been out there for 15 years, and he carries his didgeridoo. And somebody on your podcast have probably ran into Oliver and seen him or heard him play the didgeridoo out there. It was just kind of amazing. Like the guy Alex, he was on his 25th or 26th Camino since like 2019.
Wow.
He's retired Royal Air Force pilot, and he's like got nothing else better to do, so he goes on the Camino. I met another guy that owns a business that was selling his business to another guy, and they wanted him to stay on for the next 5 years. And he's like, okay, but I need 2 months off every year because I'm going to take a vacation. And his vacation this year was walking the Camino. And he started like in Denmark and walked from Denmark down into France, and then was walking the Camino. And it's just the people you meet are just amazing.
Yeah.
And I can only think that if you do a longer Camino than what we did, you know, starting Astorga, it's only 180 kilometers or whatever it is to Santiago on the Francés way. if you start like in France and walk all the way, or say you start in Portugal and walk all the way up, you're going to meet a lot more people. And if you're not in a group, I think it might be even kind of better. It was great with our group because we were kind of tight knit and we were close, but some days you'd walk with the members of our group, and other times you were like, I just want to be alone, or hey, I'm going to go talk to this person and see who they are and meet
Yeah.
new and interesting people. And that experience is just, it's priceless.
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. So you said that when you met the guy with the didgeridoo, you had stopped in to get a stamp. What was it like for you collecting the stamps? Did that have any significance?
Yes, it did. And I know your viewers not going to be, listeners aren't going to be able to see it, but this is my passport here, and
Yeah.
it's covered front and back. I was getting very worried that I was stamp crazy because I love getting stamps. I'd pull over and stop somewhere just to get a stamp. One of the people in our group said, "You're going to run out of room." I said, "Well, I'll find another passport if I have to." But
Definitely.
that was the highlight of getting the stamps. And so my very first stamp when I was walking is this wax stamp right here, and it's got the cross of the, I'm going to mess up the name. Uh,
Is it the
yes,
Templar
the
cross?
Templar cross. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I got that stamp on our first day walking on the 30th. And I got that stamp not far right outside of Astorga, about a kilometer and a half before Prima di El Gazo, I think it's how you pronounce. And this guy, he's an illegal stamp giver. I was lucky to get some cool stamps. And that was the first stamp I got physically walking. I had 3 stamps prior to that from the Gaudi Palace and Astorga Cathedral, and then our albergue we stayed at the first night, which was amazing, by the way. And his name was Vida in Camino, and he was on Instagram. And a friend of mine that had walked the Camino about a month before, she said, okay, follow this guy on Instagram, find out where he's going to be that day. It's going to be your first day when you're walking coming out of Astorga, and get his stamp. And that was probably the coolest stamp I got on the whole Camino, along with the Donkey Man, which was down towards the end. And that was pretty cool experience too. So I I would probably, if I did it again, I'd probably bring 3 passports with me.
I think you need it. Yeah, I would think you would need them. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can get those all along the way. So anytime you need one, you can just stop by an albergue. One of the municipal albergues will have it, or certainly cathedrals and churches sometimes have them as well.
I laugh every time I see somebody write something like, oh, is it hard to get 2 stamps a day? I said, no, it's hard not to get 4 or 5 stamps a day, because they're everywhere, and it gets kind of addicting to get the different stamps and see. And some of our people in our group, they would like, you get a stamp and see what it looks like. Yeah, I don't like that stamp. I'm not gonna
Ah,
get that one. I'm gonna save my room. And
oh,
then
that's
somebody
funny.
would be like, oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I want that stamp too. So we were all like, some people had stamp envy, and there's a couple places I stopped. I'm like, I could really stop in here and get a stamp. I said, but I'm probably behind or ahead, and nah, let me keep walking. And one place had ice cream that had a stamp. So I regret not stopping and having ice cream and getting a stamp.
Okay, here's the rule. You always stop to get ice cream, and then it's a bonus if there's a stamp.
Yeah, but you stop too long, and then people are like looking at you funny. Why are you here?
Oh, I just let them. I don't care.
I'm talking about in our group.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. It's funny with these stamps, we turn into big kids, right? And
Oh
we
yeah,
want all of them. We want them all.
right.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So you said that you did mass every day. Were there any other rituals or routines that the group did that really shaped the experience?
So I was talking about laundry earlier, and you're asking about the clothing, and I think less is more actually. But the first night we were there, when we were at the albergue, Jim, he said, all right, we had these mass books that had all the mass in it, just like a little thing we carried. And in the back, there was a couple blank pages. He said, take that blank page and divide it into 16 squares, 4 across, 4 down. So making like a bingo card. And that's exactly what we made. We made a bingo card. I can read some of the stuff you had the bingo card. And one of the things was laundry duty. So every day, 1 or 2 of us would have laundry duty. We'd gather up all of our pilgrims, so 9 people's clothes, and you'd go down and before you did anything, you throw on some dirt, some clean clothes, take your dirty clothes off, everybody throw it down. You were probably the last one to get a shower or whatever, but you went down there, did laundry. You took your little change purse, people gave you euros, and you went and did laundry. So the very first night when we were walking, we got to our albergue, I had the very first laundry duty, me and another person. So I got to get my first square filled out for our Camino bingo. And what he had on there was, I'm going to read them to you. There was walking with cows, and there was just no random order. He just put these in whatever order, and you had to try to find to get a bingo, 4 across, 4 down, 4 diagonally. So walking with cows, the witch, Pulpo Man, which is the octopus guy, and I had some of that octopus. Michael Jackson, which is everywhere. Laundry duty, one-legged cello, Chucky's sister, Herrero, Ring My Bell, The Great Pumpkin, Donkey Dude, which was another guy giving out stamps, the 100-kilometer mark, Green Lady, Raspberry Car, Wild Hops, which I never saw, and I was very disappointed with that being a beer guy, and the Shadow Pilgrim, which you don't see till the end, which was pretty cool. And if you don't find the Shadow Pilgrim, I don't know if you did your Camino right.
Wait a minute. I gotta take issue with that because I have been on the Camino for 20 years. I have never seen it.
I've seen it twice, and I was only in Santiago for like 2.5 days.
Well, the reason why I have never seen it is because I'm a morning person, and you can only see it at nighttime when it's dark, and I'm never out at very late.
Or you can see it like if the sun is in the right spot.
Yeah. What time is that?
I don't know because it was rainy the whole time we were there. It seems like.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So you saw
it's worth seeing the Shadow Pilgrim. It's pretty cool.
It is cool. I've seen the photos. Yeah.
Yeah. I got some good pictures of it.
Fun. That's a fun way to work together with the group to be able to have a game going on amongst you. That sounds really fun. Yeah. Very good. So, anything else about the regular things that you did every day, the mass, the rituals, routines, anything else to share about those things?
Yeah. So the very first night we were there, we stayed at a private albergue, and it was amazing. It was right on the edge of Astorga, and I'm gonna mess up the name. So I'm looking for it. I'm sorry. Okay. I apologize.
Now let's get the name. I think people will want to know.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Okay, it was a private albergue, and it was called Flores del Camino.
Okay.
And it was I'm going to butcher the name. I can't. Castarello de las Pulveres Astorga. So,
yeah.
Yes. Small little town with cobblestone streets.
Yeah. Let me make sure we get the name. Hang on a second. I'm gonna say it because people will want to know about that. Let me see. Oh, it's not on my app. Because Flores del Camino is actually a space set aside, let's just say, they do all the retreats. Okay, I've got it.
Okay.
Flores del Camino, which is somewhat of a retreat center, but they do all different types of programs. And the village is called, it is a hard name to say, Castillo de los Polvazares. And I'll put that in the show notes so people can find that.
Yeah. Amazing little town. They take their siestas seriously there because we walked up the street to have a drink before dinner, and while we were waiting, and nothing was open. We walked all the way to Old Town, and finally we just I said, they're going to open at 5:00 or whatever time it was. And one of the girls looked at me, are you sure? Yeah, it's 15 minutes. Let's just sit down and wait. And sure enough, at 5:05, they opened the door and we went in and had a drink before dinner. So we get to that albergue where we stayed our first night. And that's where I got my third stamp. My first albergue stamp. The people that run that place were just so kind. They had a sign, a printout sign with our names, me and another guy, we stayed upstairs. So they had a pointing going up the stairs, and we had this big, huge loft area with 2 beds and a dining room table. And that's where we stayed. And I was above the kitchen. There was a outside staircase, and there was a spiral staircase inside. And they made us our first pilgrim dinner in Spain. That's where we had, and I had the best lentil soup I've ever had in my life. And the rest of the time on the Camino, I wanted that same lentil soup, and it never met that expectation. I
No.
was very disappointed. So it was just super, super cool. So that night, um, we got together as a group, and Father Steve gave us, he had our shells laid out on the table up front. And I don't know if we had mass that night. I think we did. And we had mass there the next morning. And at the end of that night, they had all the shells out on the table, and they had something else I would like to show you. And I'm going to describe it. So it's a little canvas bag that says Warriors on the Way, and it's got a little zipper on it, and it's kind of got like a map and stuff. There's a gentleman, and I don't remember his name either, out of Oklahoma, that makes these, not just the bag, but the crucifix.
Oh,
So there's these
beautiful.
beautiful crucifixes, and they had them all laid out on these bags on the front table with our shells. And Father Steve had us come up one at a time and pick the one that spoke to you. So the shell, and I don't even have my shell up here. I apologize for that. So I picked out my shell, and this crucifix that this guy in Oklahoma made and gives to Father Steve to give out to the pilgrims that are coming through the Warriors on the Way program. And what's really cool about this, and it comes with this certificate of authenticity that shows a picture of the actual crucifix that I have, the exact same one. And this crucifix is a third-class relic because it's touched 5 other first-class relics.
Okay.
So this crucifix has touched the cross, St. James, Greater the Apostle, St. Francis of Assisi, St. Clare of Assisi, and St. Ignatius of Loyal. And it's got all the certificates on this piece of paper there. And when Father Steve was telling us all about this, I was just, okay, the Camino can end now, and I came what I've come for. I mean, I had lentil soup. You just gave me this crucifix that's touched all these things, and my mind was blown away. I was like, this is really happening. This is crazy. And to be able to carry this crucifix and pray with it at all these historic sites and chapels and churches and places we had mass every day was just an amazing experience. And to top that off, so you might have heard about this guy, Martin Sheen.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
And he made this movie about the way 20 some years ago, whatever it is. I don't know, 2001
2010.
or 10. Okay,
2010
so
it came out. Yeah.
15 years ago.
Yeah.
He has been in contact with Father Steve and the people at Warriors on the Way, and wrote a very cool letter to us, the veteran pilgrims, and they read that to us on the first night. And it was just like, what is happening?
Right. You're killing me here. Oh my gosh.
It's that doesn't happen. I mean, this is a very special organization, and what they're doing is just amazing. And I can't thank Father Steve and Warriors on the Way enough, and all the support we had. It's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's hard to beat a Camino like this.
Yeah. So I'm going to have contact information for Warriors on the Way and Father Steve in the show notes. So anyone who is moved by this story and the potential to serve our veterans, if you'd like to make a donation, these trips really make a difference. Let's talk about the difference this has made. When you think about your arrival in Santiago, how were you different by the time you arrived in Santiago? Anything had shifted for you?
Besides my clothes being wet?
Well, we know that's a given, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was very fortunate. I didn't end up with any blisters. I had that issue with my little pinky toe. I did lose my little pinky toe on the right side, or my left side as well, and then my twisted ankle. But those are just minor complications. You can get around those, and just to be able to go and celebrate mass every day, be given this amazing crucifix or rosary,
Yeah.
and just spend the time with fellow veterans walking, miles and miles and miles every single day. It was just, it's amazing. I made some lifelong friends, and just we have an app, a chat app that we use, and not a week goes by that somebody doesn't send something onto the group on that, and that app will always be there, and our group's always there, and everybody has their own phone number, each other's phone numbers, and just lifelong friends that you made, and it's made me a better person, and I can't wait to be able to go back and experience the Camino again. And I'd like to take my wife with me and walk, 800 kilometers next time. So,
Wonderful. So I hope you don't mind me asking for a little bit more information. When you say it's made you a better person, what do you mean?
um, I guess I've seen a lot of loss in my life,
Yeah.
and every day that you're still here, it's a blessing. It's tomorrow's not guaranteed. I get off this call with you this afternoon, and something can happen to either one of us later today. You just don't know when it's your time to go. It's your time to go. I've been in combat. I've had cancer that came and went and came back and caused a lot of complications in my life. Just some of the disabilities and the PTSD I had. Warriors on the Way, the first day we got there, they had us fill out a PTSD assessment. And then at the end, they had us fill out the exact same assessment. And you don't just read a question and answer, 1 to 10 or what, I forgot the numbers. And just the change from the beginning to the end of the Camino, it was just amazing. And at least from my personal experience, and the number and the results of the same questions of how it made you feel, and that in and of itself has made me a better person. I mean, I still have my bad days just like anybody, but it's pretty good. And something I keep talking about doing is I may get a tattoo on my arm to represent my Camino. I haven't done it yet. The first time this has ever happened is on our Camino in Santiago. One of the veterans in our group got a rather large shell and cross tattoo on the side of his rib cage. And I asked Father Steve, I said, has anybody ever gotten a tattoo before? He said, yes, after they get back to the States, never while we're still in Spain. So my buddy Josh holds that record. So that's
Holds
pretty
that
cool.
record for the Warriors on the Way. Very good.
Some of us might have walked by the tattoo shop and kind of peeked our heads in and checked on them.
There are a number of reputable tattoo shops in Santiago, and they do a big business with
Yeah.
pilgrims. Yeah.
His tattoo turned out amazing.
Well, I can just hear in the stories that you've told and how you are talking about your Camino, what an incredibly impactful experience it was. It's all over your tone and your voice and your demeanor.
Yeah. I do miss a few things about the Camino.
Yeah. Like what?
I miss coffee con leches. I'm
Sure.
back to drinking my coffee black. I miss having everywhere you go. Vino Tinto is much easier to have than water because usually they charge you for water. Vino Tinto comes with the red wine comes with the meal, so that's a good thing.
Yeah.
And then Padron peppers.
Oh yeah, those are so good.
Somebody could find Padron peppers in the United States. Please let me know because they were so good.
You might have to grow them yourself.
I've looked for the seeds and stuff.
Oh, really?
I don't think it's possible, but I'm gonna keep
Oh,
looking. I'm on a
oh.
mission.
Okay. I bet you will be successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Anything else you'd like to share before we wrap up?
No, I think that's good. I just really appreciate the opportunity to come back onto your podcast and talk to you again and your listeners. And once again, thanks Father Steve, Connie, and Jim that helped us out, and all my fellow veterans that were on the Camino with me and Warriors on the Way. Amazing organization,
Yeah.
and they're doing some great work for our veterans across the country. And we got to meet some of the a couple of veterans from other countries, from there in Spain, that Father Steve knows from other pilgrimages, and we met with those guys, had dinner one night, and just the whole experience, and just being in Spain and walking on the Camino it's unbelievable.
Wonderful. All right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being with me today and sharing your stories. And I'll look forward to having you back on the show when you and your wife go walk that full 800 kilometers.
Sounds great. Thanks,
Yeah.
Nancy.
All right. Thanks so much. Bye bye.
Bye.